Welcome back to True Crime Lounge podcast here on Spotify and YouTube. I have a Patreon that you can join for access to episode scheduled to come out. I also have a merch shop that you can get for all your true crime gear. For any updates on my channel or podcast, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, shall we? Today we are going to start a little mini series in which we will discuss the case of Natalie Wood. Was her death an accident or foul play? By the end of the series, I will let you know what I think it was, but feel free to let me know your opinions as we discuss this case. But as most of y'all know, I love old Hollywood. I love the movies. You can't make movies like this anymore, in my opinion. But Natalie Wood was only 43 when, in 1981, she would be, along with her co-star Christopher Walken and two others, went out for a cruise aboard her husband's yacht. Next morning, her body was discovered floating in a clad of flannel nightgown. Her husband was ruled, for her death was ruled an accident and no foul play was suspected. According to Robert Wagner, the group had enjoyed the drinks on the Catalina Islands, then returned to the yacht. Wood went to bed, and when she followed her for a cup, he followed her a couple of hours later, and he discovered that she was missing. He notified the others and then went to find the yacht to find the ship's dinghy, dinghy to search for her, and it was gone. They immediately radioed for help, and a search was underway. Her body floating by a river by one of the helicopters later that morning. Perhaps that would have to end of the story, but in 2011, the LAPD reopened the case, citing new witnesses in a different timeline than what was originally reported. This information came from passengers on nearby boats who said that they heard a couple fighting and a woman screaming for help that night. In 2013, her cause of death was later changed from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. Evidence was cited that she may have been assaulted before her death, noting bruises, scratches on her skin. 5 years later, Wagner was identified as a person of interest. After after Wood's death, rumors abounded. Some say there was too much chemistry between Christopher Wood and Walken, her co-star from the movie Brainstorms. Others say Wood and Wagner had long-time difficulties, given the fact that they've already been married and divorced from each other once. Some said a search didn't even go until 5:30 the next morning, after she was most likely dead. The truth will never be known, possibly. But as many of the witnesses have since passed away, Robert Wagner is still alive, and 40 years after the death of Wood, yet no charges were ever filed. Now let's dive into the nitty-gritty details of this case. Shall we? Alright. So, Natalie Wood would rise to stardom at the age of 16. She would co-star with James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. In 1961, she played Maria in West Side Story, was nominated for an Academy Award for her performance of Splendor for in the Grass. In 1981, she would drown during a boating trip with her husband, Robert Wagner, Brainstorm in 1983, with co-star Christopher Walken. And these circumstances remain controversial. She is the daughter of Russian immigrants and she was born Natalia Nikolaevna Sarenko on July 20th, 1938, in San Francisco, and started performing at the age of 5. Her mom, Maria, enrolled her in ballet classes at a small age. At the age of 4, she landed her first film role in a bit of Happy Land in 1943. What happened in the filming of Santa Rosa which happened to be filming in Santa Rosa, California, where she was living at the time. She even won over the director, Irvin Pichel, after her mother orchestrated their introduction. Wood would claim that her mom told her to make Pichel love her. So the dark-haired, doe-eyed girl soon made an appearance in other film appearances. Wood tugged at the heartstrings of the audience with a small role as an orphan in 1946 drama Tomorrow is Forever with Claudette Colbert and Orson Welles. In 1947, she again won over fans with her first starring role in Miracle on 34th Street, the movie about a little girl who questions the existence of Santa Claus. And this would make Wood a household name. At the age of 16, she would begin filming one of her most famous films, where she co-starred with Dean and Sal Menino in 1955's groundbreaking depiction of a teenage rebellion and angst rebel without a cause. In this film, Wood played the girlfriend of a troubled outsider portrayed by Dean, and she earned her Academy Award nomination for this work. So, as most of you know, it, during this time in Hollywood, like a lot of actors were under contract, so they had no choice of what movies they could or could not do. Like they were just told, "You're doing this movie." Well, as she was under contract, she would sometimes make movies that she didn't want to. Her mom also pressured her at times. She said one of her least favorite projects was The Searchers, a 1956 Western starring John Wayne, and she said she felt like an outcast as a white girl who was abducted and raised by Native Americans. In 1961, she would star opposite of Warren Beatty in The Splendor in the Grass, playing the part of a young girl turned by desire and social convictions. In The Wood, in this role, she would show a great range of emotional, fragile young women. In that same year, she starred in another troubled romance. Can you guess it? West Side Story. Personally, one of my favorite versions of the movie. But anyway, in which she fell for a boy from the wrong side of the tracks. The urban retelling of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet proved to be a hit, and it did all her own. She did all her own dancing in this musical, but her singing was done by Marni Nixon, a Broadway performer. Mirroring her own life in a way, she played the title character in 1962's Gypsy, the musical about a stripper Gypsy Rose Lee. Rosalind Russell co-starred as her domineering stage mom her, who drove her daughter to perform. Now there was some off-screen drama in the course of the marriage too. Wagner. Wood would earn a lot of press, not just for her acting role, but her personal life. She enjoyed a great popularity, becoming a hit with movie star and fan magazines. Wood had numerous relationships, both public and secret, with with her co-stars, colleagues, and other stars. She dated Dennis Hopper, Hotel Dynasty heir Nikki Hilton. If you know, why does that name sound familiar? I think if you lived in this century and haven't been living under a rock, you know why that last name sounds familiar. And of course, this one is the reason you know who hasn't been living under a rock. Elvis Presley. Hmm. Her first marriage in the 1950s also attracted a lot of media coverage. The 18-year-old star wed Wagner, 8 years her senior in 1957. The couple began a favorite subject in fan magazines. The union unfortunately did not last, and the pair splitting up in 1962. Around this time, Wood had become involved with Beatty. Even after years of therapy, Wood reached a point of deep despair in 1966, and she attempted to kill herself over by a drug overdose that year. As part of her recovery, she would take a break from movies. In 1969, she would marry Richard Gregson, who was a writer and a producer, and the couple had a daughter, Natasha, the following year. In 1972, her volatile personal life took another turn. She turned She divorced Gregson and decided to remarry Wagner. They had one child, a daughter named Courtney, born in 1974. This time around, she would devote more time to her family rather than her career. The pair stayed together until her death in 1981. So, what about her later film and television career? Wood would return to the big screen in 1969 comedy Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, co-starring alongside Elliot Gould, Diane Cannon, Robert Culp, and after the film she took a few acting roles which earned positive reviews for her, and a televised version of Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in 1976. 3 years later she received acclaim for her role in the television miniseries From Here to Eternity. That same year she would pair up with Sean Connery, for the poorly received sci-fi film Meteor. She next appeared in 1980 comedy The Last Married Couple in America, another effort that failed to garner much commercial or critical success. In 1981, she worked on her final film, Brainstorm, a sci-fi thriller with Walken. This brings us to her drowning death. So, in November 1981, she would take a trip along with her husband Wagner and Brainstorm co-star Walken to the California Catalina Islands on their boat Splendora. On their boat Splendor. On the night of November 29th, the three couples had been drinking, and Wagner reportedly broke a bottle during a fit of anger over Wood's relationship with Walken. He thought the pair seemed too close, and after the incident, Wood and Wagner got into an alleged argument. Later that evening, Wagner was unable to find Wood. Her body was discovered the following morning, floating in the water off the Catalina Island, near a dinghy from Splendor. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning. It's theorized that she fell into the water after attempting to secure a dinghy to prevent it from banging into the boat. Some objected to this explanation, as was lifelong fear of water. Yeah, I know, right? Makes no sense. Well, friends and family gathered in Los Angeles, Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery, to say goodbye to her. Um, Some of her mourners would include Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, Eliza Kazan, former colleagues and associates shared remembrances. Along there would be director Sidney Pollack as well. And over the years, her turbulent life and its unexpected ended up the subject of numerous books and television programs. With younger sister Lana Wood and Dennis Darvin, the captain of Splendor, have been especially outspoken about her death. Darwin even co-authored a book about that fateful night, claiming that he had not told the authorities the truth. He later indicated, though, that Wagner was responsible for her Wood's death. There's also reports and other boaters about a woman's cry for help that night. In November 2011, the LA County Sheriff's Department announced that it would reopen the investigation into Wood's death, receiving new information while specific details were released. Authorities indicated that Wagner was not an official suspect. In the June 2012, the mystery for prolonged the official cause of Wood's death was to be changed from an accident, as originally noted in the LA County coroner, Thomas Nucci, an undermined death. In 2018, it was revealed to the LA County investigators were seeking to talk with Wagner as a person of interest, returning to the nearly 40-year-old case to make headlines.